I write down, I have a section where I write down every single character, because you don't know if the bus driver who has one line in the beginning is going to become a major character in the end. I write down the page number where they first are mentioned. Anything that is said about them, their height, their width, their size, their color, their lisp, their accent, I mean, obvious things, but also things that may not be obvious because they really help to color the character. You know, it's a bleached blonde, or and a lot of it may start with some sort of stereotypical decisions are made about that character, but anything that you can find to just give it some dimensionality. Is that a word? Dimensionality. Yeah. It's two-dimensional, and it's our job to make it three-dimensional. I found one time this one book, A Map of Glass. There were a lot of discussions between these three characters, and I knew the three characters, but by the time I was 3/4 of the way into the book, I really knew these three characters, and they could talk back and forth, and I could do it seamlessly, and boom, I just inhabited each one. And all I could think was, God, I want to go back to the beginning. I know them so well now. If I could just start over again, but it's a railroad. You go in one direction. There's no changing of altitude and going backwards. We don't necessarily have time. It'd be great. To go back on some boats, not all.
And you do discover things.
Well, yeah, you do. But then, you know what, maybe this is a rationalization, but it occurred to me that here I've come to know these characters over these 200 pages that I've read them, but so has my listener.
Right.
That is really fun, because then the character finds you. Sometimes, if the writing is great, you just get out of the way, and you don't have to do any of that work, because the characters are written so clearly that your job is just to stay out of their way.
But sometimes it's not.
And sometimes it's not. And then I use archetypes. You know, characters are archetypal, right? We're all different types of people. So, you know,
or in a story, there are archetypes. Like, you know, like there's always a hero and the
and so when the writing is not good, you choose that archetypal character, and then you push through that archetype to make them real, so that they're not, because you don't want a cartoon, you know, two-dimensional type of character. You have to make, and no matter how heroic or big, and we were talking earlier about reading characters, fantasy-type novels, where, like, somebody's a dragon who can turn into a human, or a witch, or a vampire, or a werewolf, right? And so, you know, so I take those books and I go, okay, if that was real, like, let's make that really, like, it's you know, you take that archetype and you stretch it so that it becomes so elastic that it's real. And I think about people who do animation, right? That's what they do every single day, right? You make those characters are archetypal, but they exist.
You know, I don't care what book it is, but if Cassandra Campbell's reading it, then, you know, let me try that. And to me, it's a real responsibility to our listeners to be able, because we're not just sharing a 2-hour production with them. They can be listening to us for 25 hours. And I think that it's really important. It's an awesome responsibility to know that they're giving us their time. They're giving us their precious days and hours. And so we're going to do the best we can do, no matter what the material is that we get each and every time, each and every moment to moment to moment to moment, because that's all you have to be able to string those moments together, to give the best that you can give each and every time. And we're so appreciative of the phenomenon that audiobooks have become, and also of the amazing listeners out there who are willing to give us that time.
Because, Coleen, truly, if it's a 25-hour audio and we're boring them after a few hours, they're not that devoted.
So another question here. Yeah, I'm wondering, now you said that it's really like a train, you know, if you're on track, you're going to get it done. What is your time frame per 100, page book? I mean, what do you get for the research and doing?
Mainly we're paid per return.
Well, it depends on whether it's a simultaneous release, which happens more and more, where the book is coming out the same time as the hardcover, the audiobook. What that means is we'll get a manuscript that we can prep with, but we often don't get the final manuscript that we can actually read from. You get maybe a week or 2 weeks, depending on the schedule. But a lot of times you've got to get it done in a very small window.
but sometimes,
And it's getting tighter.
yeah, it's getting tighter. But there are more and more back releases because audiobooks have become cheaper to make, and prices have gone down, especially if you're downloading them onto your Nook. Then oh yeah, you can. Then they're doing old. I was talking to an author, and I was asking her questions about this book, and she said, "Oh my God, I totally forgot I wrote that book." It was so old, but it was in the paranormal romance genre, which is extremely popular. So they're just churning those babies out. But in those, you often have a bigger timeline. But
I'm going to say a week to 2
Yeah.
is average.
the book.
And they'll ask you in advance, you know, can you do,
that's
and they'll
make
give
that
us a
now.
deadline, they'll say, can you have this back by
But
such
that's
and
to
such a day?
read it, to...
That's everything.
The whole bit.
Yeah, and that's where it gets tricky doing our own research, because sometimes you're, you know, like, you know, trying to figure out how you're gonna get all this done.
At
but-
any given time, I'd say we are narrating one book,
Yeah, read.
prepping another
one.
at the same time.
Was there another question?
It was the same, it was
Oh.
the timeline.
Okay.
In terms of the pickups that you were given, what kind of time frames are associated with those? Are they like even
That's
worse?
a good question.
Even
They'll give us
worse
15 days, but then when they email you, they go, can you have these back tomorrow?
Or, you know,
Or they'll send
Like
it to you on a
contract,
Friday and say, we need them Monday morning.
Yeah, we need a Monday morning, you're like, oh.
And the second question though is if you're doing self-directed readings out of your garage and or home, do you have ISBN/connection that you're getting direction from them on certain parts or not? Is
Some
it
people
all
do,
about
every
you?
now and then, but
I think
No.
a couple publishers try to set that kind of thing up, but not for the most part.
Okay.
It's just us, basically.
I think,
And then the same with the pickups, you know, it's very tight windows. You know, say, are you available, whether going into the studio or whether we're at home, you know, yes, I'm available, accepting the job. And then you better meet that deadline, because a lot of times it is simultaneous publications, they have deadlines to meet. So again, it comes back to that sense of responsibility that we all have as professionals. I think that one of the reasons why we continue to work is because if a producer calls us, they know we're they know we're reliable. They know that we're going to deliver it, and they don't have to think twice about it. Now, they don't know we're at home going, oh, my God. But we get it done.
They probably do.
We get it done.
Now they know.
the last part of the
Sure they
conversation that we wanted to bring up was how new media allows listeners to become more active and interactive. There are a lot of communities online that have developed now that Goodreads is one that there are groups on. I don't know if you know what Goodreads is. It's sort of like Facebook, but just for books. Huge bazillion people are on this, and there are many groups that you can join. It's almost like having a book club online, and there are at least 5 or 6 specifically for audiobooks where people recommend books to each other. They talk about books, and some of us are also, as well as authors, are interactive on those sites. There's also Audiobook Community, which is, again, sort of like Facebook, but this is run by Audiophile Magazine, and you can take these if you want, where you go and can talk to other listeners, can interact with narrators, and learn some of the great things that happen on these communities that people talk